Welcome to the Journey of Self-Growth podcast, episode 26. I'm ThE, the host of this event, which was created so myself and others can share perspective on the concept of it in hopes that one another's journeys would be relatable, establishes awareness, and inspires listeners to adopt and maintain such behavior. If you desire to be a guest on this show, which can result in enhancement of self-identity and skill set, you're invited to do so by reaching out to me on Instagram at KiteRaps or leaving a comment in a live stream or replay section of this episode on YouTube. And if you have a question or a comment for us in either Instagram or YouTube, you're invited to post those comments and we'll try to address them at the appropriate time. Today, there is a new featured guest to the show, and I'm excited to have a conversation with him, and hopefully we can inspire one another's growth as individuals through our expressions. His name is Mr. Tarquin.
Tarquin, yes sir. Appreciate you having me. I'm Tarquin of the Next Wave podcast, where we bounce back, lock in network, stay 10 toes down, less sir.
That's amazing, and I'm glad that you have an opportunity to host a podcast, and I hope that the podcast is a resource for your listeners, and I enjoy the show myself.
Yes, sir. Appreciate that.
So I'm going to open the podcast by asking you a few questions. The first question is, what can you tell me about yourself a little bit further?
That's a good question. A question I typically kind of struggle with because I don't know where to start. But Tarquin, born and raised in San Francisco, California, in the Filmo as we like to call it. I think one of the biggest things about me is my tenure in working with SF youth, right? Me and all my brothers went to community programs, after school programs, and my older brothers worked with kids, and I kind of snowballed the journey for me to work with kids, and then just getting real intentional with youth work and working with families especially. I was able to see that a lot of the people coming where I'm from, a lot of the young men in particular, we all have a lot of the same barriers, same challenges, and it's not anything new. It's just the next wave of children and families kind of trying to navigate this system. And so, I wanted to do something more intentional in imparting guidance and knowledge for a lot of younger men in particular, just to figure out how to navigate their life into a healthy space and create the life of your dreams. Right? If you're not having fun, then what are you doing here? If you're not enjoying it, then what are you doing here? And it became something that was like, do I want to do this? Do I not want to do this? But I think if you lived a very unique experience, which I think I have, I tell people all the time, I've seen it all, and I've done just about half of it. I think you have an obligation to impart some knowledge and guidance onto that next wave, that next generation of young people who are coming into that space. One thing that I thought about one day is, it would really break my heart if, I had a group of young people that I was working with, or a group of young people in the neighborhood, or some of my friends who were trying to figure things out. And they were like, Tarquin, you saw me engaging in X, Y, and Z, and you didn't say anything, and that's when I knew, it was going to become something, something elevated.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've been doing it for a year now, and I think I've had quite a few people involved. I've had quite a few people who are killing it in their field, professionals who may be taking an innovative approach, and I'm having a lot of fun. I'm networking, so it's going well so far.
I'm glad it's going well, and I'm also glad that you had opportunities to attract seemingly reflections of yourself in terms of your work ethic and the way you intend to engage with the youth, because those type of individuals are valuable from my perspective.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna inquire more about what you said. But
Sure.
my next question is, what would be your perspective on the concept of self growth?
Um, well, a handful of things come to mind for me because I would describe my podcast as a young men's empowerment and self improvement platform.
Mm-hmm.
Although, anyone, women and anyone of any age can get value from it. But I tell people all the time, there is no growth in your comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
And, growing isn't comfortable. So if you're not doing something challenging, if you're not pushing yourself, or if you find yourself, um, kind of stuck, that may be a good thing. You may be going in the right direction. I'm around a lot of people and I work with a lot of people who consider themselves to be cycle breakers.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, a lot of the work that it takes to be a cycle breaker is not easy at all. And I have a huge respect for self growth, in particular the journey. And the journey of self growth. I think it's a great name for the podcast. Um, and my piece of guidance when it comes down to self growth is to have respect for the journey, is to find times to live in the moment. I know for a lot of people who want to break those generational curses of their family, they have an end goal, and you put your head down and you work, 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 and you look up and you still have so far to go, right? You work, 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 and it's like it could be discouraging knowing that you're only chipping away at it. And what I tell people all the time is, instead of just focusing on that end goal, why don't you turn around and look at what you've created in that journey? Look at the footsteps that you've taken. Look at what you've left behind for people to follow. And it's changed my perspective on things, in terms of like, I don't have to do this, right? I'm not waking up thinking, man, I got to do this. I got to do this. I got to do this. I'm waking up thinking, man, I get to do this. I get to engage in this. I think that's just me trying my hardest to just immerse myself in the journey. The journey is so important. The journey is, one of my favorite quotes from Nipsey Hussle is, don't skip steps. Don't cut corner, don't skip steps. Because if you skip steps, you're going to miss the lesson. A lot of people going to hit their end goal. Did you cut corners? Did you move your way to the top because of who you know, or did you put in the work? Did you do the knowledge? Did you figure it out? And I think when you really immerse yourself in the journey, that's where that guidance piece is going to come, right? Because it's going to be another wave, right? That next wave of people coming behind you. Hey, Kite, hey, Tarquin, how'd you do this? How'd you do that? I'm trying to navigate this issue. And I think if you skip steps, you're not really going to tell people, you're not going to be able to impart that knowledge on people. And so, that's what I got for it. I'm really trying to enjoy it.
Yeah, I can relate to you too. I'm passionate about self growth myself, and I relate to what you're saying. I think that I like how you said, it's not what I need, like what I should be doing is what I get to do.
Yes.
And you definitely enhanced my awareness of that contrast.
Yeah.
And I think, I will be more mindful of the gratitude to have the opportunity to do things in the present, which also helps me to maintain that presence for me. So yes. I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, it's super important to kind of, to shift the perspectives, I think that's where that's kind of where my journey started too. Just seeing things a little differently.
We have a comment on YouTube. It's from, I don't want to mispronounce it, Nesu Tutu.
What's up, cuzzo? Is that your folks? That might be my folks. I think that's me. I think that's my folks. What's up, cuz? Yeah.
Yeah, we appreciate the comment. And if you have any questions or additional statements, please, we invite you to do so It helps to enhance the experience, and your expressions can also inspire us to grow, and hopefully our expressions will do the same for you. My next question is, how are you currently growing?
How am I currently growing? That's a good question. I think the nature of my job, just working with children and families,
Mm-hmm.
there's something new. There's a story every day, right? I think it's important to be able to bend and flex at the needs of certain programs and communities. I think those who stay rigid end up breaking, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think, just the nature of my job is definitely a growth experience. I think, just trying to do the family thing. As a married man, I think that's something that keeps me focused, right? I can't just crash out. I got somebody else that I got to think about.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then, I think I pour a lot into this podcast, right? Um, Let me know if I'm getting long winded, but the genesis of this podcast and Next Wave, for people who know me, I'm a nerd. I love trivia. I love learning, and I chose Next Wave. It's a double, triple entendre, and it was so fitting, right? And just thinking about facts about waves. A wave is a disturbance in a specific medium across all forms of matter, right? I work with kids, and just like you want them to be able to find out what they're good at. So, what medium are you coming with? I love music. I try to reach kids through music. I try to reach kids through athletics, right? Workforce development, any like style, image, things that are important to young people, like that 18 to 25 demographic, folks who are dipping their toes into the corporate world, folks who are trying to get their social reps up, folks who are trying to, figure out what the dating market is and how do I want to show up. And so you just got to find your right medium. And if you're in the right medium, you can shine, right?
Mm-hmm.
Amongst all the states of matter, gas, liquids, solids, you can create waves in that, right? There's seismic waves within the earth, right? There's waves within the water, and then just thinking about how waves behave, right?
Mm-hmm.
The distance between the top of a wave and the bottom of a wave scientifically across all states of matter, it's called your crest, right? And then understanding that waves have highs and lows. And as people, as individuals, we also have highs and we also have lows. And then learning to celebrate myself, right? Again, going back to trying to live in the moment and respect the journey. There's so much that I have on my plate. There's so many goals that I want to reach.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to learn how to celebrate where I am and all the obstacles that I've overcome. I've exceeded all of my expectations that I set for myself 10 years ago, 15 years ago, right? I would actually genuinely be surprised if the 20-year-old version of me could see me now. Because a lot of people around me, they didn't make it, and they made the same mistakes as me. We did the same type of stuff. But I think I was I had a passion for learning, I had a passion for self-improvement, and I had some good people around me to help me reclaim my life. So it was that. I think that in of itself is also like a growth opportunity,
Mm-hmm.
right? To unpack that is also like a growth opportunity.
Yes, and I think what I value is just simply an opportunity. And I say simply, not lightly. I don't want to say that lightly, but opportunities are, man, seemingly greater than gold, at least from my perspective. Because if I can proceed on doing things that I enjoy, whether it's like professional or fun, it seems like it needs opportunity is necessary in order to do so. So, yeah, I'll take an opportunity over gold any day. So what I want to ask you about is you had said in your bio that you're originally from San Francisco.
Yes,
For
sir.
those who may not be familiar with the Bay Area, where what district or where in particular in San Francisco are you from?
Yeah, I grew up in the Fillmore, Filmo as we like to call it. And I have an appreciation. The older I get, the more of an appreciation I have. Um, it is not the easiest place to survive. Um, I think in general, there's going to be a lot of environmental factors that are going to trip people up, especially young men. And I think whether you was in the streets heavy and you trying to make some differences now, or you a square bear, we all had to survive it. You know what I'm saying? You had to walk outside, and you had to navigate that space. And when I think about that to this day, me and a lot of my friends, I was telling my homeboy the other day, if you are gainfully employed, you got all your mental faculties, you still here physically with us, you doing something right. You've done a lot of things right. Um, and it's just I really want to be intentional with how I'm showing up for this next wave of young people coming from this part of town.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but we've had it's a pretty popular part of town. I would describe the Fillmore as like the Harlem of the West, as many people would describe it. It's a very very rich jazz culture here. I think gentrification has impacted us in the past 15, 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of I would say there's still a thriving Black community here. Community that wants to invest in the next wave of young people coming up. A community where you can tap in, and there can be a plethora of opportunities for you here.
Mm-hmm.
But with that also comes the potential dangers that will trip people up. So it wasn't a cakewalk trying to grow up, and I didn't always enjoy it. But back I have an appreciation for it.
I'm glad you were able to, avoid the pitfalls of living in the city, which I can relate to. There was a time when I grew up in the city of Richmond. A majority of my family is from the East Bay in the Richmond area. And fortunately, similar to yourself, I had some guidance from people who are mature-minded and conducted themselves in a progressive way that inspired me to stay the course of just self-growth, really.
Yes.
So I know San Francisco somewhat. I used to work as a stagehand. And for those who are unfamiliar with what a stagehand does, stagehands are responsible for setting up for live events such as a concert or a convention happening at a convention center in San Francisco. There is the Moscone Center, which is huge. They have car shows, Salesforce, the big tech company. They have their annual event there.
You ever been at the Cow Palace?
I've driven by the Cow Palace. I don't think, maybe I have been to the Cow Palace once as a kid, but is it still,
It's still there.
do they still have events there?
I know they did the rodeo a few months ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they're still having events there. I've been to the rodeo at the Cow Palace before, when I was a kid.
Okay. Yeah. I think I went to a trade show there with a relative, an older relative. And it's huge. And when I used to work as a stagehand, I heard like setting up a convention at the Cow Palace is like one of the most challenging to set up because it's just an older building, and I guess the ceiling or the roof is extremely high. So if you wanted to fix lights to the top of the ceilings, you have to go up like 50 plus feet in the air. So if you're scared of heights, probably don't want to be a stagehand. But I was fortunate enough to go to multiple venues in San Francisco as a stagehand. So I've been to the Fillmore once, which is if you've never been to the Fillmore before, you're probably gonna have to ask someone in the neighborhood how to get there because it's like seemingly no signage on the building. It's like a building on the corner.
Yeah.
And it's like no sign.
We had big names come through there too. I know Dave Chappelle did one of his more popular stand-ups at the Fillmore.
Yeah, it's and then I think not far from the Fillmore, there's Japantown,
Yeah.
which was cool. Some good food there. If you like anime, they do like cosplays or anime cons in
Yeah.
that area. People dress up and stuff. But yeah, I like San Francisco. I'll be honest with you. I never wanted to live in San Francisco because I like a mixture of urbanization and naturalization, which we have in the East Bay. At least, when I think of San Francisco, I think of downtown. And like when I used to work there, walking down like Market and the side streets over there, and it's sunny. Didn't get a lot of natural light as you're walking amongst the tall buildings. But I've never been to the Fillmore. I've never been to Hunters Point, none of those areas. So I can't say it's like that everywhere. What I do appreciate about San Francisco is the culture because I like sociology. I like to interact and meet new people and notice the subtleties and even the distinctness of how a culture is cultivated and is demonstrated by
Yeah.
the people who live in that particular city.
Yeah.
Like, San Francisco has its own culture seemingly compared to like Oakland and Richmond. So I love the culture. I love the San Francisco music, like RBL Posse, Rapping for Tay,
Yeah.
Messy Marv, all those
Yeah.
memorable.
Oh, it's funny you say that. I don't know if you're talking about, like the culture, black folks, right? I love it. I'm thinking more like macro, like San Francisco as a whole. Culture is something that I'm not too happy with, right? Like me and all my friends, or I still have a lot of friends in the city, but like you grew up here and you can't really afford to live here. Like I think that's a damn shame. And sometimes I'll ride around and like you see people on the street. I get, sometimes I get sick to my stomach seeing young people, young men, whoever, like on the street, right? I think San Francisco is getting harder and harder to navigate. I believe we have the densest population of billionaires in the country, if not the world, and like in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, and like we still got kids with no Wi-Fi. We got all these tech companies out here and we still got kids who they can't play in the basketball team because they got holes in their shoes. So I think a lot of people, especially people like in other parts of California, outside of California, they hear San Francisco and they thinking money. They think you got all these people out here, but it's not that we're all getting money. It's just that wealth divide is getting wider and wider and wider. And again, it's the nature of my job working with children and families. I've heard some horror stories about what families are going through financially, and you can't really survive here, and you go to a different part of town, and you getting looks, you getting looks over there in that other part of town, and like just the level of ignorance of some people, especially the transplants who come here. You come in here as a transplant, and like you're talking to somebody who had to, born and raised here and had to survive, and it's kind of like we're getting pushed out. I think gentrification has really done a number on it. Gentrification has reached everywhere in the Bay Area. Oakland I'm sure is just as bad, but it's just like I don't mind commingling. I don't mind everybody eating, but it's everybody got to eat. Everybody got to eat. And it's like I don't know. There's this dog eat dog kind of situation, and capitalism is something that none of us really like, but we are forced to participate in it. And that's if I could change something about San Francisco, it would be that people come here and they get all these opportunities, these tech companies, and it's like why not teach these kids from the neighborhood? Why not teach them something? Why not teach them in invest in them, invest in them? And it's like it's also twofold. We gotta want it as well. I work with a lot of people who, a lot of young people who have a lot of opportunities presented to them. And I'm low key begging kids to, join my program, join my basketball team, join this, join that. And they don't want to do it. I think it's cool to be a crash out. I think it's
Hmm.
cool. All these kids want to be the trapper, rapper, scammer, put on the and it's like, bro, I get it. I get it, but just try to think a little further down the line. But there's a lot that I would change about San Francisco.
And speaking of the challenges of San Francisco, there's an incoming question, and it comes from
Anna.
Montana McDaniel. How has your upbringing and environment shaped you, and how have you embraced or challenged those influences to grow?
Um, that's a good question. I would say, just the nature of my job and working with young people, you got to really be PC, right? You got to really be politically correct. And I think traditionalism. I think a lot of times we're moving away from traditionalism, but the older I get, the more traditional and conservative I get, and I believe in hitting different competencies. I think that's a good way to sum it up. I would love to see, a lot of young men invest in themselves when it comes to their image, when it comes to, building skills they can leverage on the market to earn money the clean, legal way. I would love to see them get their social reps up, right? And, those are all good things, but also, like, you got to kind of be dangerous. You got to have the capacity for danger. I also think, all the good things I want these young men to be, you also got to know how to throw a punch. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not saying go out and punch people, right? But a lot of this is like I have a younger brother. He just turned 19, and I worry about him when I hear that he's going in this place, he's out in public, and just thinking about what could happen to him. I would feel less concerned if I knew he had the capacity to really mess somebody up, right? So I think it's all about just channeling it and doing it in a healthy way. But just trying to hit every competency, be a good guy, right? But know how to get up out of a situation, know how to, when it's time to throw them things, you gotta know how to do that too. So it's a whole rounded kind of individual that I would love for people to see. And a lot of people, they hear that and they're like, Tarquin, you tripping, you wilding right now. You can't tell people to. It's like I'm not. I think a lot of people hear me say go mess something up, but it's like that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you have to know how to like protect yourself and navigate any space, right? And so just thinking about my upbringing and folks around me, and the turn the other cheek thing doesn't really work in that locker room, right? He been pulled up on you, or you in the neighborhood, and you know what I'm saying, and like you're trying to be here in the safe thing, which is I'm not saying be confrontational. Yes, avoid conflict, but also you got to know how to dig your heels into the ground and throw them things for a minute. You feel me? And get up out of the situation. A lot of people, surprisingly, a lot of people don't really take favor to that. So one of the challenges I'm dealing with is like how can I articulate that need and that competency in a way that's PC.
That would be challenging. I mean, just a statement in itself of
Yes.
being defensive
Yes.
could be challenging to pitch to a parent,
Yeah.
or a guardian. I
Yeah.
can I can relate to what you're saying because growing up in Richmond, there have been times where I've gotten robbed or I had to fight,
Yeah.
and I think in retrospect, I think I'm a spiritual person, and I think like I hope that God or the universe wouldn't want me to be in those types of situations where I have to always like fight for myself or defend myself.
For sure.
And I think sometimes when I reflect on the situations that I've been in that were adverse, I think I tended to overlook indications that I should have walked away sooner than later.
Mm-hmm.
And so hopefully, with your brother, he has the proper guidance, which helps him to enhance his perspective on what's happening around him, and helps him to be aware so that he can not lose sight of the indicators. Similar to a boxing match, there's subtleties in the body movement of the opponent. And if you're distracted by trying to anticipate what could happen, you might get blindsided, or not blindsided, but you may
Yeah.
miss what's actually happening. So
Yeah.
I think it seems like it's possible to avoid certain situations if you're aware of what's going on, and it
Yes.
seems like God will provide you indicators like, oh, this might be going down, so
Yeah.
you need to move a different
Yes.
way.
Street smart. Know what it look like when somebody finna rob you. That's what I'm saying. Know what it look like. Oh, he got it. He reaching for something. He doing this. Like, you could be a good guy. I'm not saying go crash out, but like that desire, I guess. I'm all for backing out of it, try to get up out of the situation. But like, like when I'm out with my wife and just thinking about, I want to have kids soon, and like when you're responsible for providing safety for
Mm-hmm.
a person or a group of people,
Mm-hmm.
like some of this thing gonna go out the window. I'm not playing any games when it comes to my loved ones, and so I think. I mean, and this snowballs into a whole topic on masculinity, which I would say in the past couple years, 3 years or so, I've had different ideas of masculinity, and it's constantly changing. I don't think it's something that's going to really stick. Um, but like, yeah, bro, yeah. Sometimes I'm talking to people, and you almost got to apologize for being a man, right?
Hmm.
Other times, I'm talking to people who grew up with those same kind of traditional conservative values, and people who I see the value of having a man around, right? And then just with my job, it's just like you're working with children and families. Sometimes people are like, hey, we need a man at the front to watch the door. We, what I'm saying, like somebody coming through. And then in spaces where you don't really want that energy around, right? And so admittedly, it's something that I haven't had set in stone. It is
Mm-hmm.
something that is constantly changing, and maybe that's a good thing, right? I consider myself a lifelong learner, right? So I'm willing to listen, and then adapt to the better argument, right? I'm willing to listen and adapt to, what works best for myself, my loved ones, the larger community. But it's something that's constantly changing.
Mm-hmm. I don't think it's nothing wrong with learning defensive skills, such as like martial arts and boxing, but hopefully hopefully the intent to do that is to develop a certain intellect versus the
Yes.
intention to like harm someone, and if need be, once you learn these skills, which is developing yourself as an individual, the pleasure is the learning of it. You know what I mean? So,
Yes.
um,
Yes, and it's some people that like it's difficult a lot of times because once you under them lights and the situation pop off, and it's like, damn, bro, you didn't have to do all that. You know what I'm saying? Like, some people really be on 10, so that's another thing to kind of to navigate as well. And it's tough. It's tough. I think a lot of
Mhm.
people hold conversations when I talk about this topic. People are like, man, like, yeah, I didn't know you kind of felt the same way too, or I didn't know you seen that. I thought I was alone with that, but it's nice. It's also nice, just being relatable, right? My platform, I think it's more so like a men's space, and I love hearing people, give me feedback like, man, you hit a good topic. I thought I was the only one that was kind of thinking about it. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's yes, it's nice.
Speaking of which, for those unaware of your podcast, like what can you tell listeners about the Next Wave SF podcast?
Yes, Next Wave SF podcast. I would describe it as a young men's self-empowerment and self-improvement podcast. I think anyone can get value from it. You don't have to be a man. You don't have to be young. Because I'm trying to say as much wholesome stuff as possible. But my target audience, I think it's important to have a target audience. Starts with just my passion in working with young people. I work with kids who could shoot like Steph Curry. I work with kids who can run like Colin Kaepernick. I've worked with kids who can, who are really smart. Work with kids who are great musicians, but one or two mistakes kind of ruined all that. And I think damn shame, because a lot of it is avoidable. But I really want to hit certain competencies like intersexual dynamics are always at play. And I think that is probably the number one cause of men crashing out is them not understanding intersexual dynamics, right? There's certain things that you cannot say or do. There's certain things that, you might have to think about. What are you willing to put up with? We see it all the time in the dating market, right? I think it might be the biggest competency. Number two may be just finding skills that you can leverage on the market for money. How many kids, want to go bid people for an extra $1,000 when instead you could start a podcast and try to monetize your channel or learn how to bake and then go to Alamo Square Park and sell cookies or something like that. Figuring something out because I think men with no purpose become dangerous men. I think if you out here just floating and you're not really to lock in on anything, then you're probably willing to do something at that point you're on survival. Man, just seeing people like that, if you can think about somebody who's drowning, right? They worried about keeping this above water. And when you drowning, you reaching for anybody around you and you trying to pull yourself up. And when you pull yourself up, you pulling them down. And people with jacked up lives, and I don't really want to use the word jacked up. People with jacked up lives, what they gonna do? They gonna jack your situation up too, right? It's just, we can go on and on about it, but that's something that I really want to try to avoid. And I think going back to what I said earlier, my experience and my perspective is very unique. I thought it came time for me to elevate from all these conversations with a lot of my friends who have made it, because we identified the same thing and, go put it on wax and leave it there. Even if I don't get the views that I want to get, that information is still there. You can go tap in. And just trying to find a way to impart that knowledge on young people is not going to be perfect, right? We talk about professionalism. It's hard to have a conversation about professionalism without sounding a little sexist, a little racist, right? Like, what is professional standards? There's so many debates around that. But like, I tell people, just try to show up as the best version of yourself when you're in those spaces. I think it's so important. I think young men really get attached to their jobs, especially when it comes when it's attached to a purpose, right? And then anything you're doing, you got to look inwardly. Is this something that you want to do, right? You start with your passions. I love working with children and families. I love coaching athletics. So when I go to work, I don't feel like I'm working. I know I have a job to do, but like, I'm not doing something I dislike. I'm leading with my passions, right? And I'm bringing a lot to the table. And so it doesn't really feel like work, right? I can go to work every day knowing that, my heart is full and like, oh man, we got this scrimmage today, or like we doing music production today or whatever it is. And then same thing when it comes to, the relationships and the people that are close to you. I think, one of the things that I've developed and I'm starting to gain a lot of value from is how to have difficult conversations. And I've had some good mentors in front of me and I've seen them facilitate difficult conversations. And, again, when you want to balance and maintain healthy relationships with your loved ones and the people that you're responsible for, you got to be able to make hard decisions in a fair manner. You got to be able to have hard, difficult conversations. And so, actually, year two for the podcast, I actually want to do more panels and get in the weeds and do more debates. Right? I think it's nothing wrong with a healthy debate every now and then. Right? A
Mm.
little verbal boxing, as long as we can get to a real place and we can have like a learning exchange and figure some things out, as long as it moves us forward. And again, that perspective shift as well.
Well, yeah, I like how you elaborated on the podcast and the description of it, and I appreciate you having it around so that other people can be guests on the show
Yeah.
and provide their insight and perspective on what it takes to, live a life that is pleasing to themselves.
Yes.
And when I think about your podcast, and how you say you have activities that you enjoy, and it seems like you're not quote unquote working, but more your involvement is based out of it seems pleasurable to you versus being like a burden.
Yeah.
And it seems like what I would suggest to other people consider is that I feel like, at least for me, I sense I'm in a good space if my actions are being done and there is no expected validation
Mm.
from someone outside of myself that could, like, verify the acts in themselves. Like if I'm helping kids, that seems like it's an unconditional act, and the kids sometimes, depending on their age, they can't say thank you. And so, like, some people may expect a thank you based on the actions that they're initiating in that relationship. But if you can do something without if you can do something and there is a possibility that you may not be validated for it and you still enjoy what you do, it seems like you're in a good space. How would you relate to that statement?
I think that is a very powerful statement. I think that it is something that resonates very, very deeply. For a while, it was a thankless job. So when I first got into it, um, the job was more rewarding outside of the thanks because just the specific programs and schools and communities that I was a part of. I'm in some of the nicest neighborhoods in San Francisco. I'm with some of the most caring, wealthiest families around that are investing in me, right? So I didn't really need the things. A lot of the reward came from I'm literally not in this neighborhood when such and such, when this happened to this dude or that happened to that dude that I know, and we shoulder to shoulder in our youth. I'm literally somewhere else. So, I have an appreciation of that. I think, my work experience has developed a lot of different skills, including like interpersonal, like social reps, right? And being able to relate to other people. You can put me in a room with anyone, right? Of any social class, of any ethnic background. And I'm able to engage in wholesome conversations, and perhaps even, network and collaborate with them on something.
Mm-hmm.
And for a while, after I got that value, for a while, it was like, damn, this is kind of thankless, especially because a lot of the ways I was treated by these programs and community spaces is like, oh, Tarquin, you're the sports guy. We don't really want to hear what you have to say in this topic on how to impact the community. I'm not saying for my intellect. Black man, no college degree, early 20s. You go do your thing, and a lot of the people that I work with, the families that I work with, empowered me to be more intentional. Empowered me to, I guess, figure out ways that I can impact the community on a deeper level. But I will say this though, a lot of the kids that I used to work with, everybody getting older. A lot of them are adults now. And I did a podcast episode. One of my former students last year, he did we unpacked some phenomena. I think it was like unpacking things from his school experience, and getting my perspective as being on the other side of the fence as a school staff member or whatever. And I think it was a very positive and powerful podcast episode. And then just hearing them ask more questions about what was it like here, what was it like there, and being able to connect, because a lot of them are the same age. Well, now they're a little older. The same age when I started working in that community. I was 20 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, the way things came together. I wanted to go play college basketball. I got hurt. I didn't have a job, and then I got a phone call, and the way things just ended up happening. Now, it was kismet. It was a good journey, and I'm starting to get my flowers though. I think that's old enough to appreciate it now. You feel me? And it's nice. It's nice. I'm starting to get my flowers now. And it's not a thankless thing anymore. And I think just people just need to, especially the young people, because the parents you pouring into their kids, they gonna appreciate you. You know what I'm saying? You're gonna get the gift cards. You're gonna get the food. You're gonna get invited to different family events like that. It's just more so like, it's hard to find pockets of money working with young people. Mm-hmm. Like that industry in and of itself, you're not gonna get rich doing it. You got to really try to find where the money is. But man, it's so rewarding seeing kids. I low key helped raise in elementary school, and now they in college, and they coming back to me like, yo, appreciate you. You know what I'm saying? Or like, hey, how do you navigate this? How do you do that? And so, yes, getting my flowers is it's exciting. I like it.
I'm glad that people do recognize your efforts and express their appreciation for your relationships and bonding with their kids, which I think will be a long-term investment for them. There was a comment that came in through, I think maybe YouTube, but it comes from DeAndre Jones. He says, San Francisco makes too much money for the city to be in this shape.
Yeah.
And you guys said something about the capitalistic system that we are enduring in the United States, and it does seem like it's not the ideal economic system. Some people tell me like it's necessary so that we can like do transactional exchanges with fiat money, which I get, but sure. I think in order to still have a sense of humility, at least for myself, I do have a job, I do get paychecks, I do get paid, to help me to stay grounded and present. I do give charitably, and that intentionality of giving charitably is a unconditional act, because I'm aware when it comes to just like God or the universe, it provides me with resources unconditionally. Food. I mean, when I think about just the animals when I'm out and about and I'm amongst nature, like the nuts that the little squirrels eat, like it seems like they're provided unconditionally. So if I want to stay maintaining a sense of humility, and I'm generating this financial income through participating in this capitalistic system, it helps me to, if I can, do unconditional acts, be it volunteering, donating. So that helps me to stay balanced. And for those who are listening, I encourage y'all to do so as well, because what Tarquin was saying earlier about the corporations in San Francisco seemingly just leeching off of the city and using the people as sort of like assets rather than actual human beings, which is who they are. I feel like if they were to give back at least to a small degree, it would help them to become harmonized and connected with the city that they are, using to increase their capital and their gains.
Yeah.
How would you relate to that statement, Tarquin?
I think that's facts, and I like the word harmonize. Wouldn't it be special if each major tech company took an elementary school, middle school, and a high school and said, you know what, y'all finna get laptops, y'all finna get state of the art classroom equipment. You know what I'm saying? There's crazy because the dualities of the young people that I work with. I've worked with some children and families who are really struggling. I've also worked at, I would describe it as like a very exclusive elite high school. I've been there for about 8 years, and um, it's possible. It's possible, right? Some places are getting it done. Some people are doing it, and just like, man, these kids on this other part of the city, they gonna struggle. They gonna be behind when it comes to learning. They gonna suffer more learning loss, and all that's gonna happen is they gonna get older. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was talking to my homeboy about this. I used to love to read because I was a good reader. We do popcorn reading in class. My hand goes up. If you in the fifth, sixth grade, seventh grade, you can't read, you probably gonna hate reading. And what kind of adulthood are you gonna have? What kind of options are you going to have? I will forever get on LinkedIn and Indeed if I lose my job. I'm not gonna hit the streets and try to get out the mud. No, it's resources here.
Mm-hmm.
You feel me? So, I just think that certain spaces get neglected, and it's caused somewhat of an internal battle because I think I'm good over here with these people. I think if I just stay over here where the money's at, they'll invest in me. They got the black face, they got the black voice. I'm kind of marketable. But then it's like, I mean, I'm leaving a whole community of people with nothing, including like, how did you get to where you were, Tarquin? Because at the very least, I can tell you what steps I took to be a part of this community to get these opportunities, right? And then something that I've been priding myself on for the past years is bridging that gap, right? You got a basketball team, and you got kids from this walk of life, you got kids from this walk of life, completely different. And I think when they're all kids, when we all fifth grade, sixth grade, and under, we can all appreciate each other, and we can commingle, and we can coexist in this space. But I think when kids get older, I start to notice my best friend had money in the seventh grade, and then we kind of grew like this. You know what I'm saying? And like, the parents can see it. The adults can see it. When you pick up, or you want to go to your friend's house where he live, I'm gonna look that up on the map. No, you're not going over there. Kids don't really understand that. You know what I'm saying? We don't really understand that. They still have that innocence attached to them. And man, I hate to see when kids get older and it's like, man, y'all was best friends in the fourth grade, but you got environmental challenges and issues in your neighborhood that's gonna wrap you up that he really don't have. And his family could pay the tuition over here and kind of, what I'm saying? You probably, you're going to be a public school kid and all that stuff. And then kids kind of just drift apart. But I would love to implement something to where, we are all connected. That's just who we are. Right. And there's a learning exchange. There's collaboration. My slogan, bounce back, lock in, network, say 10 toes down, less serve. Networking is so important. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, you, I saw you on the hiring panel. I'm gonna put a good word in for you right now because we grew up, we still boys to this day. Or I'm gonna help you figure this out. I'm gonna help you tweak your resume, right? And then there's there's some competencies on the other side that a lot of people who may be successful in the corporate world, it's like, what are you wearing, bro? This shit is tacky. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, just something,
Yeah.
right? But yeah, man, it's disheartening to see, because it's almost inevitable. It's almost inevitable. It happened to me. I'm cool with one person I went to elementary school with. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, man, these, this is our experience. We're in these programs together. Like, you grew up with these people. Why separate yourselves? Why throw them away? Now I'm in my 30s. I'm so curious. I'm so curious about how people are doing. people that I went to elementary school, middle school with. I'll be on Facebook typing people's names up, and I'm connected to these people. We shared a classroom for 6 years. Like how are you?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then of course, I'm fortunate enough to have the clarity in my life to be able to reflect on that.
I appreciate you sharing that. There's another comment that came in. I think it's in context to finance and economics. It's from a friend of mine. His name is Ahmad Dillahunt, who's also a coach. He coaches golf. He's a golfer. He says, have y'all heard of Muhammad Yunus microcredit system? It's pretty interesting. Basically, the poor pay like 1% tax on loans.
I haven't heard of that.
Yeah, I haven't heard of that either, but I am open to learning new information, and
Yeah.
so I hopefully will at some point learn about that, and if it's resourceful, I'll definitely share it on the podcast as well.
Oh yeah.
There's another question. It says, why do you think that these big tech companies that have the capital to create whole curriculums for the kids? Oh, maybe you're saying, what do you think? How would you interpret that question?
Why you think these big tech companies that have the capital to create whole curriculums for our kids' schools that can...
I would interpret that as maybe he's asking why haven't they done it?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, you know what? I mean, a lot of this stuff is feelings based. I'm sure somebody can get on here and give me an answer that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also that answer that makes sense. This is the system in which we live in. It's still disheartening. You know what I'm saying? Because some people getting it, some people not getting it. I'm not sure if you want to put that question back in.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to redo that question, let me see.
Oh yeah, you recommend that he rephrase the question?
Yeah, if you want to rephrase the question, or if not,
Yeah.
but definitely thought provoking. Either way, either direction he was going with the question. But I think about it a lot. It's not, I'm like I said, I'm sure somebody can come in here and be able to explain a lot of things. But capitalism is the king ism. Capitalism drives all the other isms, I believe. But we have to participate in it. You know what I'm saying? Like I coach young people and young adults how to be competitive in the corporate world so that they can get theirs. Go get yours. There's a lot of air and opportunity out here, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of people would see that as like, man, this person taking an opportunity from me.
Mm.
And in a way they may be, everything is competitive, right? You want that car, somebody else would have put a bid in on that car. You want that girl, somebody else going to show up and try to, put their bid in as well. You want that job, it's 10 other applicants. LinkedIn will show you 10 other people applied to this job. 6 of them got masters, 6 of them bachelor's level, right? So it's like, you got to show up. You got to be competitive. You got to get yours, because if you don't get yours, you're probably going to take from somebody else, because that's human nature. And you got to live a healthy life and all that other good stuff. But it's like, you're participating in capitalism. Especially the higher up you go, you're going to become just another one of these higher ups that people assume are not community oriented, or maybe you got a set of guidelines that you got to operate from. So maybe this is not the time for you to get in there and be thinking community wise. There's a lot of sacrifices, right? And it's a very cyclical argument. I understand it is very cyclical. I'm a social major as well. But it still gets disheartening at times.
I have a theory that I want to propose regarding Nesu's question of why wouldn't big tech companies invest in kids' curriculums. My theory is probably based in fear, the fear of not having, and like I think I've heard a conversation about how a wealthy millionaire at this point, it's like I have mine, but what about my future generations? What about my unborn great great grandchildren?
The
Are
next
they
one.
gonna have some? So if they not gonna have none, it's my responsibility to make sure that they have some. But the reality is, maybe it's possible that they don't want it either. So now you've distracted yourself into this delusion of thinking that you have to be responsible for someone that should be responsible for themselves. And it'll be a never ending chase for money
Yeah,
if that's your goal. So I think
sure.
even for people who have millions and billions of dollars, they're probably focusing on what could be in terms of their lineage not having anything. And so that's why I encourage people to you know, give and act unconditionally. And you had said something interesting too about the capitalist system and how we have to be a part of it. I think it is possible to deviate from that, but it takes an initiative, and if the intention is to hopefully experience alternative opportunities that could be more holistic, it seems like, at least for me, it's the universe is like a reflective mechanism, and a four-dimensional reflective mechanism. The fourth dimension is our internal self. So the things that we think and the intentions that we have internally, it seems like the universe can reflect those in the forms of experiences that we attract in our life. So if I intend to be afraid that my children aren't going to have things, or my great 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 grandchildren aren't going to have money, then I'll probably experience attract these circumstances that will seem to suggest that this is the truth. And so now I'm in a endless loop if I don't change course or the direction of this fear that I have. And so I think if the capitalistic system isn't a sustainable system, I reference your initiatives in terms of being a coach or starting a podcast. Those are things that you didn't have to do, but you chose to do it. And as a result of that, you were able to see the fruit of your actions. And those fruit didn't have to manifest and grow, but they did unexpectedly. And so I want to encourage you and other people to think like, sometimes we think we have to do things, but if we have an opportunity to go a certain way, I think it's just a matter of will and being bold and courageous too.
Right, right. And then, something you said earlier is like, for those future generations, that value you're providing for future generations doesn't necessarily have to be monetary, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's on the internet is going to be here forever, or
Mm-hmm.
many generations, as long as the grid's up. But my future generations, great 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 grandkids, going to be able to see me speaking to the camera, tell them something that makes sense. And I don't talk about this a lot, but I thought, one of the coolest things I thought about starting a podcast was to immortalize myself.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, if something happened to me and I'm gone, you miss me, go watch one of my podcast episodes.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, there's so many celebrities that we are attached to that are no longer here, but we get our buckets filled when we can put on a music video or listen to them speak, or watch them dance, whatever it was that we loved about them. I know it's not the same, but like, yeah, it's gonna be here. It's gonna be here forever, and I think that's a pretty dope part of my journey as well.
Yes, and that's why I appreciate your willingness to participate in this episode with me, which was, it was a choice. And so if you're providing resourceful information based on the experiences that you've been through and your perspective, which is a result of the experiences and decisions that you made, then that can inspire someone in the future to encounter this podcast
Yes.
and utilize what your perspective is. So, yeah, I thank you for being on the show.
Oh, yeah. Appreciate you having me.
And let's see, what I want to ask you. Oh, so you have a unique name similar to myself. What's the story behind your name, Tarquin?
My parents wanted all French names. Four brothers. They all have French names. My parents thought my name was French, but it is not. I found out in the library in the fifth grade, Tarquin was the last king of Rome. He wasn't a very good guy, but my first Tarquin is Roman. My middle name is Ravanti, which is Italian. And I know people are like, isn't Rome in Italy? But it's different empires. Italy was generations after Rome fell, but Tarquin was the last king of Rome, I believe in like 549 BC.
Mm-hmm.
And he's the reason why Rome implemented the democracy.
Mm.
My folks just liked the name and thought it was French, so they rocked with it. And I found out 11 years later that it is in fact Roman.
Do you enjoy your name?
I love my name. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like it too. I think you're the
A
first
lot of nickname options.
such as.
T, Tart, Quinn, Quince, TQ, just about anything that you can come up with. Yep, I didn't heard it before.
Someone put it. See if I can find it. It was. They said someone said from Taj Farley. Put
Varsity.
said big tarts.
Yeah, that's my guy. It's one of my former students. My guy right there. Yeah. And then it's funny too because based on what someone would call me,
Mm-hmm.
my back is turned and someone calls me by like one of my nicknames, I have an idea of who it was where I know them based on the name. So when I was growing up, I had a basketball coach at the YMCA. He used to call me Tark. I hated Tark. My mom used to call me Tark. I did not like Tark. But as I started coaching, people call me Coach Tark. And I was like, yeah, that kind of fits. Um, or if somebody calls me Quinn, I know it's probably somebody I grew up with or somebody from the neighborhood. Somebody calls me Tarquin, it's probably someone from a professional setting. It's probably somebody from my childhood. So, it's yes, it's nice to be able when I'm in different communities, like people call me different names and they stick.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
There was a question that came in from Joseph Park.
Yo,
His question,
Joe.
he says, working with a variety of youths from different backgrounds, is there a common issue that you've seen regardless of socioeconomic status?
Um, not with like elementary school age. And actually like I would say no, not too many issues. I'm sure I could think of a few, but something that man, this is crazy. Something that I thought about was, I told you I work in some pretty like elite spaces and programs where the kids are very well off, and it's like, damn, I'm working with this kid to get them to be the best version of themselves, and within 2 to 4 years of their adulthood, they're gonna be making more money than me. I did not like that. I did not like that when I first started. I'm like, man, you. I mean, we've all seen the kids who kind of just skate through school, but because their daddy is a partner at the firm, they're gonna get into a good college and they can pay for this and they have access to that, and it's like, damn, you finna outgrow all of us. And I'm pulling up in my little Saturn at practice, and they pulling up in Audis and Mercedes and shit. I'm like, God, yeah. But I will say I've never had a kid like shit on me or shit on other people because they come from money. I think a lot of the kids that I work with, fortunate enough to work with some, in some wealthy spaces, but they're also like wholesome spaces where they have conversations about, like privilege and different walks of life and just understanding that some folks gonna have it and other folks not gonna have it. And so there haven't been any horror stories, but I can definitely see, working with different socioeconomic groups and communities that There are some differences for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the big differences actually is families are more trustworthy of a school community or like a youth program if they have money. The families who don't really have money, you know what I'm saying? The families who, these parents may have had adverse experiences even within like this school district that we in now. Now they kids is in it. I do find that I become like the black kid whisperer, the black family whisperer, you know what I'm saying? Like, or the black family liaison. That's a big one. And I don't think it's a terrible thing. I think it's a beautiful thing. It's like, hey, I knew him from the neighborhood. A lot of families I work with now is like they know me from the neighborhood, or like I went to school with jOuRnEy. And she come to pick you up twice a week. So it's like it's all high fives, handshakes, and hugs. And I think more so it's a beautiful thing, but it definitely exists though.
Mm-hmm. I think because I used to do some volunteering at a fourth grade elementary school in Richmond, Steege Elementary School, which was the school I attended as a child, and also I was a professional teacher aide in a preschool setting, and through my early childhood development education, my perspective was enhanced of children's body language, children expressionisms, and I think one thing that I think may transcend social economic status when it comes to child and parent relationships is the quantity of attentiveness and nurturing that your child experiences or lack thereof. And that could be due to the parent maybe being falling into the temptation of making a certain dollar amount, or having expectations of how a child should behave versus being aware that unexpectancies can happen with a child and in terms of how they express themselves with the parent. And I think that probably stems from a parenting style that probably is the authoritarian parenting style, which describes the child as like a subordinate to the parent versus the parent and child relationship being considered like equal, where the parent recognizes that the child is pretty much an up and coming young adult, or a potential adult, and so you want to provide the like the appropriate quality nurturing and guidance that an adult would need, but in the form of expressing it to a child. But if you see the child as someone who is lesser than you based on their age and appearance, then the child may act out because they don't feel confident to express themselves in an adequate way because of a fear that if they do so, it would be considered offensive to the parent who has this expectation of the child behaving a certain way.
I think it's so interesting you said that. And I hope I'm not missing the mark here, but I was talking to a parent the other day. Like, I really want to raise my child with, this idea of self-empowerment, and challenge things that don't really suit them. And they were like, but they can't do that with me. And it's like, okay, well, I think there's a healthy balance there. The kid who says, yes, mom, yes, dad, to everything, and never ask why are you asking me to do this? Like, this don't really seem fair. That's probably the kid that's easily lured into doing something crazy at school by some older kids, right? And I don't have any kids yet, but I work with kids, and I had to shift my perspective. And it's like when kids talk back, or when they be like, why I gotta do this, I start to explain it to them. And I don't yell at them. I explain it in a very calm manner. I try to be as impartial as possible, because you asked a good question.
Mm-hmm.
When you on the other side of that, when you're on the other side of that, having an opinion, and I come from a household where my parents they didn't really play that. What I'm saying? What you
Mm-hmm.
we asking me why for?
Mm-hmm.
But it's like I have an appreciation of that, and um, I'm getting some good reps right before I have kids. I have an appreciation of that, and I think it goes a long way. I want my kids to be able to challenge things that don't work for them, in their journey from adolescent to adulthood, and beyond. And sometimes you're gonna be the target of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I know we're getting late into the podcast, but I want to address a couple comments that came in. This comes from Sam's son. He said, "Shout out both of you for taking the time to put out positive content." And said, "Question. This is probably for you. What are the top three steps/tips would you give to young men trying to navigate adulthood in San Francisco with respect to health, finance, and relationships?"
Health, finance, and relationship. I would say number one in general for everything. You are not going to skip steps on the way to whatever your goal is. The only answer, the only option for a lot of your problems is to do the work,
Mm-hmm.
whatever that is. And doing the work typically starts with looking introspectively and saying, "Hey, does this fit me? Does this work for me?" And I think that's across all topics. Financially, build skills. I have very strong opinions about college. I started late. I didn't finish. I may finish just because it's a personal project of mine. But the job that I work at now, I get people coming in with bachelor's, master's degrees, and they don't make as much as me. You know what I'm saying? I think a lot of companies are moving towards that meritocracy. It's like if you can do the work, do the work. So I don't think kids should just go into this cookie cutter factory kind of. I'm gonna go to City College and take classes because it's just a thing to do. Consider trade schools. You want to break into tech? Go take some courses. Go look at some certificate. If I can get my degree over to do my city college over again, I would have got certificates in child development. I'm working with kids. I would have did something that's gonna give me some economic value. So think about that first. And then a lot of young people can't really have that conversation, right? So I know a lot of parents don't really like what I just said. And then it was financially, it was health
Oh,
wise.
yeah.
Take care of your health. Take care of your health. Hit the gym. I would say, just like there's a lot of illnesses out there that stem from just poor diet and exercise. I got a type 2 diabetes diagnosis, which I've reversed successful
Wow.
in 18 months with no medication, just by listening to my big brother telling me to hit the gym, right? Um, and that's for Black people in particular too, right? Um, just think about it. I work with a lot of kids, and they like, "Man, Tarquin, you eating salads with no salad dressing? That's white people shit." And I'm like, "No, it's not. It's healthy. Like we got to change our perspective. Your body is your temple. You get one body. So health wise, and then also mental health. I think everybody should make an attempt to get a clean bill of mental health. I think therapy is now therapy is kind of like trendy and cool and people doing it for the wrong reasons. But like, if you feel like you're going something and you can't really shake it off, you don't got to write that out by yourself. There are resources for you, right? And if you are getting all these other things figured out in your life and you haven't done the mental health piece, I think you're a walking crash out time bomb.
Mm-hmm.
And then was it relationships? The last one was relationships.
Relationships.
Um, Sheesh. Number one, understand that it's a market. So
Mm-hmm.
you cannot look at yourself in the mirror and listen to your auntie and granny gas you up and tell you that you a 10 and you gonna find somebody and you gonna do this. No, I'm here to tell you, you probably got some things you got to work on because it's a market. You have to appeal to the market, right? And I think a lot of people don't really understand that. And then just understand what you are not going to put up with. There's certain situations that it's like I'm not ever going to deal with this in my relationship. So
Mm-hmm.
know what to walk away from. because I think crashing out is an all-time high within Black relationships. So, and and men in general, most guys get no play, and we have dating apps to kind of refer to who's getting all the swipes.
Mm-hmm.
Again, going back to the journey, if it's not your time, it's not your time, right? Don't get out there and say something crazy and with a bunch of girls coming through, and now you calling them all out their name because you thought it was cool to do, right? Just be yourself, and understand the work that you have to put in, and get your social reps in.
I appreciate that. That was also valuable to me. And I want to add to one book that I recommend, which I also put in the YouTube chat, it's called "The Body Keeps the Score." It's by an author named Gay Hendricks. And to describe briefly what that is, he presents this concept. It's called the upper limit problem. And the upper limit problem is a condition that transcends social economic status as well. It is, to describe what it is when how can I describe it? It's like, it suggests that we as individuals have the ability to self-sabotage ourselves, regardless of regardless if the situation or the circumstances we're in is pleasing to ourselves or not. We could be in a good situation, such as having the money, having the house, having the relationship, and despite experiencing these positive situations, one can still do or make a decision that could sabotage these beneficial outcomes. And it's generally rooted in fear. And so he provides ways to overcome the upper limit problem, which is something that I've dealt with as well. And it also talks about how we as individuals have the ability to impose a form of hypnosis on ourselves, through conditioning ourselves and using like a narrative to justify our acts. And so it provides ways to overcome the imposing of self-hypnosis, which stems in fear, such as a phobia. If I tell myself like I'm afraid of a snake, my mind cannot distinguish the narrative that I'm imposing on myself from the actual act of being bitten by a snake in real time. So if I see a snake tomorrow, my body is going to react based on that conditioning that I've imposed on it. So this is a brief description of the upper limit problem. You can find more about that in it's called, what is it called? I'm sorry, that's the wrong one. That's the wrong one. That's not The Body Keeps the Score is a different book. I'm sorry. I'm trying to think of what The Big Leap. I'll put it in the group chat. It's called The Big Leap. That's the book by Gay Hendricks. The Big Leap. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, we're gonna proceed on. Give me 1 second. Okay, we're going on to the next scene. I appreciate all the comments and questions. Appreciate y'all. Okay, so we're going to go to the next scene. This is called the multiple intelligence theory. So for those who are unfamiliar with this theory, there are two popularized theories. One is more favored and adopted than the other. The more popular one suggests that we as individuals have three forms of intellect. And since it's widely adopted, we are tested on these three forms of intellect in academic institutions such as high schools. And depending on how well we perform on those tests will determine if we are then able to proceed on to the next level, which is college. So when we take an SAT exam, they test us on our math, writing, and scientific skills. However, there's an alternative theory. It's called the multiple intelligence theory. would suggest that in addition to the three intelligences that I mentioned, there's six additional that individuals have. And with practice and repetition, each intellect can be enhanced. And so the reason why I present this theory on the podcast is because it's possible that individuals may be not aware of this theory, and they could be dealing with some low self-esteem because they may not be have high degrees of writing, math, or science, but they could have enhanced degrees of musical, as existential or spiritual, interpersonal, also known as people smart, bodily kinesthetic, body smart, athletic, intrapersonal, self smart, the ability to know self, and spatial intelligence, the ability to engage and interact with the world outside of human beings, such as architects and interior designers. And so, if you're aware of this, this could inspire you to want to better your skill set, and which ultimately can result in your growth and maturity as an individual. So the question that I want to ask you, Tarquin, is of the nine multiple intelligences, which one or more do you sense you have high degrees in? And how would you suggest to listeners, based on your experience, that they can enhance the ones that you have high degrees in?
Okay, it's a two-part question. Let me get the first one first. So, musical, facial, intrapersonal, bodily kinesthetic,
Yes.
and interpersonal are probably the ones that I value the most. And what was the second part to the question?
How are you able to develop those intellects?
Um, there are some things that I don't. You may not be able to develop. I think there's some things on this list that you either have or you don't have. But there are some things that you can develop. I have a passion for music. I haven't put any music out, but I have like over 70, instrumentals, and I got some stuff written. And, a lot of it is just listening to more music. So I think when you immerse yourself into a specific competency, you can get better at it. That's number one. Number two is, do you remember when I said earlier about waves traveling through mediums, right?
Yeah.
We'll take a sound wave, for example. You can't hear anything in outer space because there's nothing out there. There's literally no medium. There's no air. There's no water for sound to travel in, right? And so these, to me, are all mediums. And just trying to be as innovative as possible and working with young people. I have a leadership group that I do yearly. And, it's a lot of like workforce development. I'll give them things they can put on their resume. Like we'll do community events and, teach them how to work independently, work in groups, all that good stuff. Right. The kids that I go after are the ones who, are not really getting it done, or maybe they talking a lot in class. If you talk a lot in class, you're going to be the head of our marketing. You get sent out of class, I want you on my team because you like to talk. When we doing our bake sale, you the one out there that's talking to people. When we doing our basketball tournaments, you the one that's kind of setting it up, right? Or skills. These skills are not highlighted or appreciated in the classroom when you're 12 years old. But when you get older, man, working in groups with adults is sometimes it's kind of ugly. People don't want to do public speaking. Man, that's a skill. If you can't sit still in class, that is a medium that is going to come in, that's going to provide value. When I was young, I used to get phone calls. I used to take these pencils and I used to, make these beats on the table, right? And I make beats now, do music production, right? And so maybe it's not your time, right? Maybe you're not in the environment that values that medium in which you're performing. But I think it's important that people try to find those mediums, and I try to meet my target audience through those specific things as well.
Okay. And I like how you said, just because just because a person in the moment maybe conducting themselves in a way that's not fitting for that environment, that's not to say that those skills could be utilized in a different circumstance versus condemning that act. Try to cultivate and also have a sense of awareness that this is a skill, but it's possible with the child he may need some guidance which can help him to become more self-aware that yes, you do talk, you do have a skill of communicating, but also realize that in that classroom maybe not do it then, and but
Yeah.
I will help you to utilize your skills elsewhere. So I
Yes,
like
for
that.
sure. For sure. Kids get punished for exuding skills at the wrong time, right? Understand you got to respect the learning environment, but it's like I think I can help you develop a passion for learning. I think I can help you develop a passion for the intellectual capacities that you have, um, and find value in it.
That's amazing, and I think your your awareness and that and your strategies and methods of helping to cultivate a skill will be a value and resource for future generations as well. If this is your infrastructure or strategies for having a sustainable business or a organization, nonprofit organization, because I've never heard that coming from anyone else. So I like that method.
I appreciate that.
And so, yeah, I appreciate you elaborating on the sensibilities that you have. And with coaching, I would imagine that the bodily kinesthetic probably is a skill set that you've enhanced and developed over time as well, because it would seem in order to coach and provide guidance to a child playing in the game, your experience is probably essential as well. Would you agree with that?
Yes, actually, some coaches will coach from the sideline. I'm the type of coach I do like I don't know what you can call it, a dynamic coaching, an interactive coaching. So I'm in the game. You're gonna have to step up. You're gonna have to guard me, right? And a lot of folks on here know I be giving these high schoolers, some of these middle schoolers problems because it's like you're gonna have to. Somebody, it's a high school out there that's as good as me, so I'm not gonna go easy on you. But it's also like I'm talking you through it. I'm teaching you the right way to play the game. You should have cut on that one, so the next time I'm coming down the court here, right, you should cut. Or like just watching me play. Like there's a handful of kids that have adopted my style of play, and it's been very successful at like the middle school, high school level. And I'm still young enough to move. I hope I can still move when I'm 50, 60 years old. It's going back to the importance of taking care of your body, but like I'm not always on the sideline. I'm gonna get in. I'm gonna give you some good reps, so you can be ready for that next level.
That's interesting.
That's how I learned too. That's how I learned. Growing up, hooping my older brothers, hooping the older kids at school. I think it's the best way to learn.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, for me, there's a difference between thinking about playing basketball and playing basketball.
Yeah.
Two totally different experiences. So I relate to that. We're gonna proceed on to the final section of the Journey of Self Growth podcast, which is called Interpreting Expression. So to give a brief description of this section, in life, I encounter quotes or statements that I relate to, and I like to present them in the podcast with the intention of sharing my interpretation of the quote, and also hopefully the future guest sharing their interpretation as well. And Hopefully, our interpretations can be relatable to one another as well as the listeners. And if it is relatable, then our interpretations or expressions overall can be used as a resource to inspire additional growth in the individuals who are listening and experiencing the podcast.
Like,
So today's interpreting expressions quote is: life moves in waves. Ride them with an open heart. Once you do, you can start embracing the pushes, pulls, gives, and takes. This is the flow of life. Welcome the extremes. Tarquin, how would you interpret this quote, and how relatable is it to yourself?
I think it's a beautiful quote. I think it's super in line with some of the double, triple entendres I got with waves. You think about what I said earlier is I think everyone should have the ability to bend and flex, right? Those who stay rigid are not going to survive, right?
Mm-hmm.
And something that's been resonating with me a lot is, all of this is temporary. Whatever it is, it's all temporary. All the good, all the bad is temporary. And I think, just when that comes to mind, like it helps me stay in the moment. And when I'm going through, through an adverse experience, just understanding like I'm going to continue to put in the work. I don't like where I'm at right now, but I'm going to continue to put in the work, and all of this will be temporary. When you look at a tide, tides constantly change throughout the day. It might be high tide, but just understand like this is temporary. This tide is temporary. And then, if you've ever stood in a natural body of water, where, the ebbs and flows, you can feel it. If you're knee high, you go to Chrissy Beach, right? You go to Ocean Beach and you knee high in that water, like you can feel it, right? You got to kind of move with it. And just being able to adjust in life, right? Just being able to see a problem and stick to that formula of success, and identify, how can I, get out of this situation, or how can I present myself into a different, better situation. And just, you just got to ride that wave.
Yeah, I appreciate your interpretation. I can relate to it. My interpretation of this is when I think of open heart, I think of openness, where I feel like someone who is closed has an expectation of how life or how the waves should move, versus having an awareness of how they are moving. And if you are willing to accept the waves as they move, then you can be more flexible and adaptable, versus saying, oh, well, I'm just going to not do anything because the waves aren't moving how I think they should be moving. And if you can have an openness, then I think you'll start to realize that unconditional appreciation is like the ideal circumstance to be in. And that's when I think we start to become more synchronized and harmonized with life, because it does seem like when we experience that unconditional love or unconditional appreciation, whether it be from another person or just getting a present that comes in a form of I'm trying to think just me simply, like I know that the other day I was having some technical issues, and I was like, wow, this something isn't working out for me. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to be patient. I'm not going to expect anything. I'm not going to get frustrated, because I think this is how the situation should be going. I'm just going to have an open heart, or have an openness to the possibility that change can happen. And the following day, when I tried to address the issue, change did happen, and it came unconditionally. Like, it was out of my control, and it helped me to just be more grateful and humble that I had the opportunity to experience that unconditional appreciation from me, based on my intention to do better in my life. That will be my interpretation of that. And finally, the last part, welcome the extremes. It seems like, regardless of if the situation is extremely pleasurable or extremely sad, in terms of what you're witnessing, it seems like it's happening for a reason. And if I'm able to stand tall, regardless of what's happening outside of myself, and not be afraid, I think my awareness of the situation happening is seemingly, hopefully, for the betterment of myself, if I can proceed through that experience based on my potentials and capabilities of conducting myself in a positive way.
Yeah.
Because I feel like if I went the alternative course of like being afraid and, like you said, having that desperation mindset where I feel like I need to pull other people down in order for me to stay up, it seems like that course of action eventually is probably going to lead to me ultimately drowning, because I didn't change. I didn't choose to like move a different way. And Rashida, your aunt, had said something that impacted me too, when she was saying like there was a time when she would like lie to herself, and internally she had some turmoil, but at some point she said, I realized, I become more self-aware that I need to do something different, and that change is what helped her to alleviate what she was dealing with. And so this will be my interpretation of this quote.
Yeah, man, I think it's a beautiful thing, you know. I appreciate it. Did you do the wave thing just for this, or was this already an organic quote you picked?
You talking about the quote, or yeah,
The quote
the
that had the waves in it, was that for me or for this episode, or was it already in the chamber?
oh, that one. It happened kind of like unexpectedly. Like it resonated with me, and I
Yeah.
was like, wow. It sort of like synchronized with the fact that you have like the Next Wave podcast. So yeah, it was just an unexpected situation that I thought was relatable to to your podcast. Yeah,
Good stuff. Good stuff. I like it.
thank you. So this concludes. I appreciate everybody for staying a little bit later than usual. The podcast usually ends at 9, but I think it going a little bit over was still for the betterment of us all, because I think I grew in the experience, and I hope listeners have found resource and can use that to inspire growth in them as well. Tarquin, what would your parting words be?
Good question. I'll probably take it back to my slogan, which I put a lot of thought and intentionality about it. A lot of this stuff I talk about is for the average guy, right? It's not for like high value people who can just buy their way into different situations. I think when you down bad, the way you down bad in the basketball game, right? You call that timeout. Sometimes you got to be able to separate in real life, right? You got to call a timeout. You got to bounce back, right? Bounce back, lock in, network, say 10 toes down, let's serve. When you bounce back, that's like that introspective work. Like what's going on, what's not working. Locking in, right? Locking in. What does that look like to most people? It looks like, finding routines, finding what works for you, maybe hitting the whiteboard again and coming up with a different strategy. Network. I think the greatest resource in life is people, right? And so, it's important to find something that you're working on to collaborate productively and positively in the community. You talked about giving back. I think, working in silos, you can be successful working in silos, but, you're most rewarding when you're collaborating with other people.
Mm-hmm.
staying 10 toes down, right? When you see someone surfing, right? Hang 10. You know what I'm saying? Like, you gotta, when they hang 10, they riding that wave. You gotta stay 10 toes down. You gotta be locked in. So once you find out what works for you, stay 10 toes down, and then let's surf. And it's a cyclical slogan, right? Once you surfing, sometimes you could fall off, right? That wave, that maybe it's low tide or whatever. You at your crest. Maybe you went down bad again. Run the slogan back, right? Bounce back, lock in networks. Hey, 10 toes down, let's surf. And I think that's something that's a formula for me, right? It's not just a slogan. So, when you really focus on what I'm saying, you're gonna get some value out of it. So that is, those are my parting words. I appreciate you for having me on. And I'm gonna ride this wave, and I'm gonna try to reach out to, with some other content creators so that we can collab and engage in a learning exchange. So thank you for that. This is my first one.
You're welcome. And I think my parting words would be, I would piggyback off of you, because what you said, like my interpretation of that is, be intentional about being resilient and also being aware, so that in times when you're being resilient, you'll know when to change course and adapt accordingly, with the long-term intention to still remain resilient, because sometimes it takes patience to go to the next level, but you can still stay consistent in frequency.
Yeah.
And just, yeah, so that would be my final words. And finally, for those who listen in tonight, I appreciate you all. If you are interested in being a future guest, I invite you to do so through reaching out to me on Instagram. That's at Kite Raps. Send me a direct message and I will respond accordingly. And please do check out Tarquin's podcast as well. It's Next Wave SF. And you can find him on Next Wave SF on Instagram. So I hope everyone will enjoy the rest of the evening. I appreciate you all. Good night.
Yeah, appreciate it. Beautiful, Kite.